G'day curd nerds. You've made a cheese, right? You've followed the recipe, added your culture, you ran it, stirred it, cut it, drained it, and then sometimes it just doesn't quite work out. Maybe it's crumbly, maybe it's rubbery, maybe it just tastes a little bit off. And you're scratching your head and thinking, what did I do wrong? Well, my friends, more often than not, the culprit lurking in the shadows, the unsung hero or villain of your cheese-making journey is pH. Now, I know you're thinking, Gav, I'm not a scientist. I just want to make a tasty block of cheddar. And believe me, I get it. I've been thinking that way for my entire cheese-making journey. After all, my motto is keep calm and make cheese. The topic of pH and acidity might not seem glamorous, but it is absolutely vital in cheese making. Yes, that little pH number can make or break your cheese. It affects the texture, the moisture, the aging, even whether your cheese ends up crumbly or creamy or melty. Before delving into specifics, let's establish a common understanding of pH. pH, or potential hydrogen, is a measure of the acidity or alkalinity of a substance, determined by the concentration of hydrogen ions. It is represented on a scale ranging from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral, values below 7 indicating acidity, and values above 7 indicating alkalinity. Now, when we talk about pH in cheese making, we're talking about how acidic and alkaline your curds and whey are at each stage of the cheese making process. And trust me, this isn't just for lab coats and scientists. It's for every home cheesemaker who wants consistent and high quality cheese. So think of your milk freshly poured into the pot as having a relatively neutral pH. It's usually about 6.8 to 6.6. Now, what's the first thing we often add? Well, it's starter cultures. These are the good bacteria, and their job and their sole purpose at this initial stage is to consume the lactose that's in the milk sugar and convert it into lactic acid. And as the lactic acid is produced, guess what happens to the pH? That's right, it starts to drop. This drop in pH is like a secret handshake that tells everything else in the cheese-making process what to do. So why is this pH drop so important? Let me count the ways. Rennet, that magical enzyme that coagulates your milk, works best within a specific pH range. If your milk is too high in pH, when you add the rennet, you'll get a weak or sloppy curd or no curd at all. It's like trying to get a bunch of sleepy teenagers to build a chook house. Not much is going to happen. As the pH continues to drop after cutting the curds, something incredible happens. The curds contract and they start to expel whey. This is called synersis. A proper pH drop is essential for good whey expulsion, which directly impacts the moisture content of your cheese. Too much moisture and you've got a soft, quick spoiling cheese. Too little and it's dry and crumbly. pH is your moisture controller. Ever wonder why cheddar is firm and elastic and feta is crumbly? A huge part of that is the final pH of the cheese. The way the proteins are structured, the way they bind together, is all influenced by the acidity. Get your pH wrong and you'll end up with a texture that's just wrong. Now, on to flavour development and ripening. This is where the magic truly happens. The specific pH profile throughout aging dictates which enzymes are active, which bacteria thrive, and ultimately which glorious flavour compounds develop. A cheddar needs a different pH journey than a brie, and if you mess it up, you're not getting cheddar, you're getting something else entirely. It's like trying to bake a cake with the wrong oven temperature. It might cook, but it won't be a cake. And finally, and this is a big one, pH plays a crucial role in food safety. Pathogenic bacteria generally don't like acidic environments. By ensuring your cheese reaches a sufficiently low pH, especially during the initial stages, You're creating an inhospitable environment for the nasties to grow in. So you can see here in this table, you can see that there are the different cheeses down the left-hand side. Then we have the drainage pH, the salting pH, and the final pH after the cheese has aged, or if it's a fresh cheese, when it's ready to eat. You can see that cheddar starts off with a drainage pH of 3.6 or 6 to 6 is the range, and then it gets salted at 5.3, and then the final pH of the cheese is anywhere between 5.3 and 5.2. Camembert is a little bit different, as well as Brie. Their initial drainage pHs are a bit higher than cheddar. The salting pH is a lot lower, but then something really funny happens, is the pH actually rises towards neutral. Instead of becoming more acidic, it becomes more alkaline. And it's really cool that the final pH can be anything from 6.8 to 7.4. So crazy that it does that. It's the Penicillium candidum and the geotrichum acting together to change the surface acidity of the cheese. Now, feta, which is a really crumbly cheese and doesn't really melt, it has a drainage pH of between 4.6 and 4.7, and a salting pH of between 4.6 and 4.4, and the final pH is about the same. So because it's high acidity cheese, it's really crumbly, and all fetas are really crumbly cheeses. Looking at mozzarella, we have a drainage pH of about 5.2. There's no salting pH because you salt it at the same time that you drain it. And then during stretching, we're trying to achieve a target between 5.3 and about 5.0. And this is precise because the curds won't stretch if it goes past this range of 5.3 to 5.0. Any lower, and then it won't stretch properly. Parmesan's a little bit of a funny one. It has a drainage pH of about 6.3, salting at about 5.2, and it stays around the same during maturation because the salt, the long brining time, really inhibits any more acidification of the cheese. And although it's very similar to cheddar in its final pH, you'll also notice that the pH at the end is the same. However, it's because cheddar, the reason it's crumbly and Parmesan has the texture that it does, is because it uses a thermophilic starter culture and cheddar uses a mesophilic starter culture. Looking at Stilton, it goes from about 6.3, salted at about 4.7, and then it goes down to about 4.8, between 4.8 and 4.6 after it's been salted. And yeah, the mold growth doesn't really change the pH too much like Penicillium candidum does in Brie and Camembert. Penicillium roqueforti doesn't really affect the acidity of the cheese as it matures. It just breaks down the proteins and the fats to create that sometimes creamy, sometimes crumbly cheese. So blues can vary through their pH, their final pH and their salting pH. And finally, lactic set cheeses, we've got set at drainages at 4.6, which is the isoelectric point of milk. That's when curds and whey can separate naturally without any rennet. And they usually end up between, after they've been salted, between 4.6 and 4.3, which is fresh cheese, which you should eat fairly quickly. So that's the data table for the various cheese types. Now, these numbers aren't rigid rules. They are great markers to help control texture, flavour and safety. For instance, Camembert's pH post-drainage is one of its quirks, and it's encouraged by the rind yeasts that neutralise the surface, setting the stage for gooey magic. So as you can see, different cheeses need their own pH roadmap. You wouldn't make a bloomy rind in the same way you would make a cheddar. It's like expecting a sponge cake to behave like sourdough. Alright curd nerds, let's break it down. pH isn't just a number, it's the steering wheel of your cheese making process. It tells you where you are and where your curds are headed. So firstly, let's cover the texture and the body of cheese. Now when curds drop below a pH of 5.02 quickly, you'll notice it right away. They'll be tight, dry, and they won't knit together well. Think of a dry cheddar or a feta that's more rubbery than crumbly. Now on the other hand, if the pH stays too high, the curds retain too much moisture. That might be okay for a camembert because bloomy rinds love high moisture interiors, but for anything aged or pressed, you'll get a cheese that just oozes when it shouldn't, and not in a good way. You'll even see some of these cheeses collapse when you take them out of the cheese mould. Now on to acid development, which equals flavour development. Acidity is part of what gives cheese its complexity. Proper acidification helps prime the curd for bacterial ripening and flavour conversion later on during aging. Too fast and you get acidic, sharp flavours early, but not much depth of flavour. Too slow and your cultures might not outcompete spoilage bacteria. The bad ones could win the race. So getting that acid curd just right, that's what separates ho-hum cheese from oh-yum cheese. Let's not forget food safety, curd nerds. A pH of under 5.3 at salting is one of your guardrails against pathogens like Listeria or E. coli. It's part of what makes homemade cheese safe to eat. And later, during the aging, pH affects proteolysis, which is the breakdown of proteins, and lipolysis, which is the fat breakdown. That's where brie gets its gooey, and blue cheese gets that mouth-watering funk. So on to salting and rind formation. Have you ever had a cheese with a rind that won't form properly? That's pH again. A cheese that's too acidic rejects salt. A cheese that's not acidic enough can't hold its structure for the salt to bind. And for surface ripened cheeses like bloomy or washed rinds, the rind microbes like Brevibacteria linens or Geotrichum candidum need a very specific pH environment to grow and thrive. So every time you stir the curds, press the cheese, or even put it into brine, you're interacting with pH. It's not optional, it's not extra, it's the silent partner standing behind your every decision in your cheese making process. Alright curd nerds, here is where the whey hits the cheesecloth. You know that pH matters, but how do you actually keep it in line? So let's use the right tools. There are two main ones. Digital pH meters are your best friend. They're accurate, fast, and easy to read, but don't skimp out. Don't buy a cheap one. So let me show you how to use a pH meter. In this instance, I've got a Halo 2 pH tester for cheese, and I'm going to show you how to use it. Now, as recommended by the instructions, I'm using steam distilled water and a squeeze bottle to rinse off the probe in between using solutions. So here it is in its little box. It comes with instructions and a certificate of calibration, plus you also get a couple of sachets of all the solutions. It comes with a storage solution, and you just unscrew that and then pull the probe out. Don't throw away the little storage solution vessel there. That keeps the tip nice and moist when it's storing. Now I'm just rinsing off the storage solution with the distilled water squirty bottle. Now there are the two buffer solutions or calibration solutions. We've got a pH of 4.01, which is the pink one. I'm just putting it into some sterile jars there. And there's the pH 7.01, which is the green one. I'm glad they're coloured so you don't get them mixed up, so that's a good bonus. Right, so they're all ready to use for testing. Now, calibration of this meter is so easy. You turn it on, wait until it says what the battery is and comes up with a reading, and then you hold it down. It pretends to power off, but then it goes into calibration mode. And then it tells you to put it into the 7.01. Then it detects it. There you go, it's figured out that it's in that one. And it tells you to wait until it's calibrated. So when the hourglass stops flashing, it'll go to the next one. There we go. So it's told me to use the 4.01, but in between, always rinse off the probe with the distilled water, then pop it into the 4.01. And it figures out, yes, it's going to use that one next. There we go, so it's now recording or calibrating until the little hourglass is still flashing, and it tells us to wait. Now this may take some time. Now I wasn't sure it was working, and then all of a sudden, bingo boingo, it saved the calibration. So it's now ready to use. So remove it from the solutions, give it a clean off with the distilled water, and you can turn it off at this stage. And it's now calibrated for the entire session for the day. So if you were to use it again the next day, then you should recalibrate the meter. So to use the meter, it's quite easy. All you have to do is to stick it into the curds, make sure the tip is buried in there, and with this cheese I needed to be between 5.3 and a pH of 5, so I've achieved that target without any issues whatsoever. Now it's time to clean it after the cheese making session. So I'm using a storage solution and an electrode cleaning solution for cheese making. So first of all, we're going to clean it and sanitize the probe. So I just luckily had a test tube, a plastic test tube there, and it probably did the job. So I'm going to put the electrode cleaning solution about halfway up the test tube, or maybe 3/4, and then pop the probe in. And now we're going to leave that for 30 minutes to clean any of the cheese solids off of the probe. So 20 minutes later, now we're going to store the probe. So I'm just going to squirt off the cleaning solution with distilled water. There we go. And now make sure the little plastic storage thing gets filled up with storage solution. So I've got a little squirty bottle that came in the box, but I've got a full bottle there, as you can see, of the storage solution. So when the squirty bottle runs out, I'll just fill it up. So you just put the meter back into the storage container and then tighten the rubber ring. It's got a rubber grommet so the storage solution doesn't fall out. And then pop it back into the box. Make sure everything goes back in there. Put your instructions back in and then pop it back into your cheese equipment storage cupboard. Now, pH test strips are okay for rough checks, especially when stretching things like mozzarella or testing brine, but they are not ideal for nuanced readings during curd development. That's where the pH meter comes into its own. Now, treat your pH meter like it's your favourite cheese ladle. It's essential gear. Using anything else is like trying to press curds with a waffle iron. Technically it's possible, but you'll be crying over curdled milk. So when using your pH meter, you should time your measurements wisely. So take readings at key benchmarks. So some key benchmarks are right before adding the culture for a baseline reference on what the milk should be. It should be about 6.6. So before the rennet is added, so there should be a pH drop here, and this is a sign that your starter culture is working. Add a clean break after the rennet has done its work. Usually the pH will drop even further down to about 6.4 to 6.2, depending on the cheese style. After drainage, it's very important to check this for texture and aging outcomes, and that's one of the key markers in the graph that you saw in the chart. Before pressing, brining or salting, confirming safety and curd integrity. So a tip is to use a simple pH chart for each batch. Track how fast the pH drops and compare it with previous makes. Patterns will emerge, and more on charts later. So you need to also understand your culture's acid curve. Not all cultures acidify at the same rate. Mesophilic cultures like MA4001 and MO30 or MA11 thrive in lower temperatures and acidify slowly. Thermophilic cultures like TA61 or MOT92 work hotter and often acidify faster, and they're ideal for mozzarella or Swiss types. So let's have a look at these two charts, and you'll see that the MO30, the temperature is a lot lower, and you'll see that the acid curve is a lot slower as well. Looking at, say, MOT92, separate chart, this is a thermophilic starter culture, you'll notice that the acid develops quickly, drops off really fast, and you have a fairly acidic cheese within 6 hours. So if your pH is plummeting too fast, you might be using the wrong culture, or too much culture. Less is often more. So this leads me to mastering the temperature game. So acidification is temperature sensitive. Cooler milk slows down pH drop, which you might want for, say, bloomy rinds or blue cheeses. Warmer milk accelerates acid production, which is good for, say, mozzarella or parmesan. Even small variations like leaving milk 1 to 2 degrees Celsius warmer can shift your acid profile and the final character of the cheese. So temperature is very important to control. One of the best ways to control temperature that I've found is using a precision cooker and a water bath. And I'll link to that video in the info card. So also watch your stirring and cutting technique. Uneven curd sizes create inconsistent whey expulsion, so pH won't develop evenly. Gentle stirring preserves curd structure and avoids acid shock from rupturing delicate curds. Imagine you're folding whipped cream, not mixing cake batter. So it's also essential to manage drainage and pressing carefully. Faster whey removal equals faster acid concentration. If you drain curds too quickly, they will dry out before reaching their target pH. Press too early when whey gets trapped, pH stays too high, promoting spoilage. Use your hands to feel curd readiness and don't press until the pH is just right. And you'll notice in that chart there was a drainage indicator for those popular cheeses. So also use pH to time salting and brining. Salt locks in the pH where it is. Think of it as the stop sign to tell pH to stop. Salting too early, you'll get an undeveloped acid profile. Salting too late, curds might turn brittle and harsh, and the final cheese will be very crumbly. So ideal targets for salting are cheddar at about 5.3, brie and camembert at about 4.7, and parmesan at about 5.2. Now this whole video may sound like a lot, but trust me, once you get the hang of it, managing pH becomes second nature. Like flipping a cheese wheel without breaking it, it just takes practice. Now curd nerds, if you're in the market for a pH meter, Hanna Instruments Australia have given me a discount code for all the Aussies out there watching for all the products on their website. Use the code CHEESEMAN to get 10% off at their checkout. Links to the Halo 2 pH meter for cheese that featured in this video are in the description below. So next time you're elbow deep in curds, remember that pH is your invisible assistant. Respect it, measure it, and you'll be well on your way to making amazing cheese. Well, there you have it, curd nerds. I hope I've helped demystify pH and acidity in cheese making. It was a tough learning curve for me as well. Now also, because you've watched all the way to the end, I have created a free cheat sheet titled pH Management Checklist for Cheesemakers, which you can download as a PDF, linked down below. It is free to everybody who's watched this video. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your fellow cheesemakers. Thanks for watching, curd nerds, and I'll see you next time.